Hi, it's so nice to be with you today, and I hope you've really enjoyed all these videos that my kids have been making for you. It's super fun because I love books and I loved reading books to them when they were little. And so it's super fun that now they're reading books to you. And so I hope while we've had to be apart that you've enjoyed listening to some of our favorite family books. So they asked me if I would read one book. And they asked me to read the book Dogger because it's the one I probably read to them the most, and I love this book. Now it's probably going to be a little bit of an unfamiliar book to you because we bought it when we lived in England, and I don't know that I've ever seen it here in America. So the few times when I've bought a few extra copies have been when we've gone back overseas. So it'll be a new book. There'll be some British words, and I'll kind of explain those to you as well. But I hope you really enjoy one of our family's favorite books called Dogger. There once was a soft brown toy called Dogger. One of his ears pointed upwards and one flopped over right there. His fur was worn in places because he was quite old. He belonged to Dave. Dave was very fond of Dogger. Look at him. He sometimes gave him rides in a trolley. See there, trolley? Sometimes he pulled him along on a lead made of string, like a real dog. And when it was cold, he wrapped him up in a bit of blanket. Now and again, Dave's mom said that Dogger was getting much too dirty. And so look what she asked him to do. She showed Dave how to wash him in a bowl of soapy water, and then they hung him up by his tail on the washing line to dry. Dave's baby brother Joe liked hard toys. He liked putting them in his mouth and biting on them because he was getting teeth. Dave's big sister Bella took 7 teddies to bed with her every night. She had to sleep right up against the wall to prevent her from falling out. But Dave, he only liked Dogger. One afternoon, Dave and Mom set out to collect Bella from school. Mom took Joe in the pushchair, it's like a stroller, and Dave took Dogger. Next to the school gate where the moms waited was a playing field. Some men with ladders were putting up colored flags. Mom said that there was going to be a summer school fair, and that was going to be to get money to buy things for the school. Dave pushed Dogger up against the railings so he could see what was going on. Just then, the children started to come out of school. An ice cream van, super yummy, came around the corner. Bella ran up with her satchel flying. "Mom, can we have an ice cream?" Mom gave her the money for 2 cones. Joe didn't have a whole ice cream to himself because he was too dribbly. On the way home, Dave walked beside the pushchair, giving Joe in-between licks. Joe kicked his feet about and shouted for more in-between licks. At tea time, Dave was rather quiet. In the bath, he was even quieter. At bedtime, he said, "I want Dogger." But Dogger was nowhere to be found. So what do you think they did? Mom looked under the bed, she looked behind the cupboard, and she looked in the closet underneath the stairs. Dave watched anxiously through the banisters. Joe watched through the bars of his cot. It's a British word for crib. Bella joined in to look for Dogger. They all were looking for Dogger. She turned out her own toy box in case he was in there, but he wasn't. When Dad came home, he looked for Dogger too. He searched in the shed and down the garden path with a torch. That's a British word for flashlight. But Dogger was nowhere to be found. He was quite lost. Dave was very sad when he went to bed. Bella kindly lent him one of her teddies to go to sleep with, but it was not the same thing as Dogger. Dave kept waking up in the night and missing him. The next day was Saturday, and they all went to the school summer fair. The playing field was full of stalls and sideshows. Go the people. There was a fancy dress parade. There were sports with an egg and spoon race. There was a wheelbarrow race, and there was even a father's race. Bella was very good at races. She won the three-legged race with her friend Barbara. Wouldn't you like to go in for a race? They asked Dave. But Dave didn't feel like racing. He was missing Dogger too much. Then another exciting thing happened to Bella. Look at that. She won first prize in a raffle. It was a huge yellow teddy bear wearing a beautiful blue silk bow. He was almost as big as Dave. Dave didn't like that teddy at all. And at that moment, he didn't like Bella very much either because she kept on winning things. He went off on his own to look at the stalls. One lady had a toy stall. Look at all those toys. It was full of knitted ducks and cars and baby dolls and bonnets. And there, at the very back of the stall, behind a lot of other toys, was Dogger. He was wearing a ticket saying 5p. There were a lot of people around the stall. Dave tried to explain to the lady that it was his Dogger who'd got lost and somehow been put on the stall by mistake. But she wasn't listening. He looked in his pocket. He had 3p, but that wasn't enough. He ran to find Mom and Dad to ask them to buy Dogger back at once. Dave went everywhere in the crowd. He couldn't see Mom and Dad. He thought he was going to cry. At last, he found Bella by the cakes. And when she heard about Dogger, she and Dave ran back to the toy stall as fast as they could. But something terrible had happened. Dogger had just been bought by a little girl. She was already walking away. Dave began to cry. Bella ran after her and tried to explain that Dogger really belonged to Dave and could they please buy him back. But the little girl said no. She said that she had bought Dogger with her own money and she wanted him. She held on to him very tightly. Dave cried and cried. And then the little girl started to cry too. But out of the corner of her eye, she caught sight of Bella's big yellow teddy. She stopped crying and put out her hand to stroke his beautiful blue silk bow. Then Bella did something very kind. "Would you swap this teddy for my brother's dog then?" she asked. Right away, the little girl stopped crying and began to smile. She held out Dogger to Dave and took the big teddy instead and went off with him in her arms. Then Dave smiled too. He hugged Dogger and he hugged Bella around the waist. "Thank you, Bella," he said. That night, Dave had Dogger, just Dogger, in bed beside him. Bella was practicing somersaults. "Shall you miss that big teddy?" Dave asked her. "No," said Bella. "I didn't like him much, really. He was too big and his eyes were too staring. Anyway, if I had another teddy in my bed, there wouldn't be room for me." And there they are, brother and sister, showing kindness to each other. I hope you enjoyed our reading of Dogger.